Welcome in to the Rockies Insider. I am your Rockies Insider, Patrick Lyons. And with so much to cover during the hot stove season, getting started here now in November, less than a month away from the winter meetings, I thought who better than to chop it up but my very good baseball buddy, Manny Randhawa. What's going on today, buddy?
Hey man, doing well. Hope your off season's going well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. I love the stuff that you're creating for MLB.com. In fact, there's a recent article that you wrote I do want to talk about here in just a moment. But Colorado Rockies, look, this is a Rockies podcast, and Jeff Passan saying yesterday for ESPN.com that now there's another name on the trade block, possibly for the Rockies. We knew a couple of the names before that, but now we're hearing that perhaps Justin Lawrence could be one of those names that gets shopped around this offseason. 30 years old, still has 4 years of club control, and he's had varying levels of success. Well, it'll be interesting to see if anyone does pick up the phone and makes an offer for a guy that definitely has closer potential.
Oh yeah, and the thing about Lawrence is, and we've seen this with Rockies relievers recently, um, and that is that it's just get him out of Coors Field, man. I mean, some guys it's just you get him out of Coors Field. We saw it happen with Pierce Johnson, local guy, recently when he went to the Braves. He was just lights out, and that's just one of the recent examples. But I think Lawrence, he's just got such funky stuff, with that sweeper and everything else that. If you get him out of altitude, you kind of wonder what he might become. I mean, Carlos Estevez is another recent example, a guy who gets out of here and really thrives. He was doing really well with the Angels, and then went over to the Phillies and got a little taste of the postseason. So, I think that it's intriguing. I think that's probably one of the more intriguing aspects of Rockies pitchers is what can we? Jeff Hoffman, right? Another one. What can we do when we get this guy out of the altitude of Denver? So it should be interesting to see what they could possibly get in return.
And the thing that is a disadvantage, the thing that stinks, it straight up stinks for the Rockies is, as you said, you get a guy out of Coors Field like a reliever or a starting pitcher, and their value soars. Well,
Yeah,
the Rockies can't benefit from that because it's still this unknown of, well, we've got our concerns and let's
yeah,
look at the
exactly.
track
You
record
can
first.
lowball. Yeah, you can lowball him because you can be like, hey man, his numbers aren't great. Sorry.
Yeah.
And all the while, the Rockies are going to know that. Well, yeah, but you're going to get him out of here, and you're going to try to turn him into what have you. So
It's true. Yeah, 2022 and 2023, really when he started to break out, 24.4% strikeout rate for batters faced, recorded ground balls on nearly 50% of all balls in play, 4.44 ERA, which we know is not bad for a reliever that calls Coors Field home. And
yep.
it sort of feels, Manny, like in this offseason, this is probably the most guys who have been on the trade market for the Rockies. And look, we know that mostly the other 29 teams, especially some of the big market clubs, they love just taking any player off the Rockies roster. Yep, nope, Dodgers are going to acquire Nolan Arenado. We're just going to take this guy from the
Yep.
Rockies, John Gray. That's always, but this is like a plausible off season where, the Rockies are trying to cut payroll a little bit. They've even said, a couple of these guys that only have 1 year left on their deal, they might be on the trade market. We know Cal Quantrill, Austin Gomber, their names are going to be bandied about, in addition to Brendan Rodgers, who is referenced by Jeff Passan. And then, Ryan McMahon is still one of those names that could plausibly get dealt. It's just interesting that in the history of Rockies baseball, this might really be the first offseason where any and all of those deals could be quite plausible.
Yeah, I mean, especially since the last window of contention when with the Arenado story at all, that group, ever since that group, the Rockies have not had an offseason where outside the Chris Bryant deal, which has turned out to be a disaster so far, they haven't really had anything quote unquote exciting happening in the offseason. This year that could change given what you just said. I mean, they're a team that has a couple of young stars that have emerged. We know that Ezekiel Tovar and Brent Doyle are. We know. I think we know more that Ezekiel Tovar is going to be an all-star type player for a long time. Brenton Doyle, really a different guy at the plate last year, and if that's who he really is, he's going to be a multiple-time all-star. Just won a second Gold Glove award, and Tovar just won his first. Those two guys I think, have cemented themselves as a part of the future here. Around that, maybe Nolan Jones gets things back next year. He had kind of a rough year with injuries and things like that. But you're starting to see this core of position players where you can start building around them. Now you got to decide, how can we augment that? How can we complement that core group with some good players outside of that? And that might involve trades. I mean, Brendan Rodgers, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like he's a fit here long term. I know that he's had bad luck with injuries and a lot of things. He just never has gotten it going consistently. We get that kind of glimpse here and there of that ferocious swing, and it's just an amazing. He can be really, really good, but he doesn't seem like he's a long-term guy here. And if you can take advantage of guys like Justin Lawrence that you can deal, who knows what you might be able to get out of that. I don't know that it's a time for free agent spending for this team yet. They're a year behind where I thought they might be because so many injuries happened 2023. But right now, you're going to have to get some pitcher. I mean, somebody's got to pitch. You got to get some pitching, especially that bullpen. But other than that, I think that this could be an interesting offseason, unlike any that we've had since 2020.
And if you're out there saying, well, I don't know if Ryan Ritter is ready to be starting at second base on opening day, or Aaron Schunk, maybe I like him better coming off the bench. Look, there's more and more guys that get to free agency, either because they've had 6 years of service time or because in arbitration, they're just making too much money. And second base is a spot where I think you can go out and relatively cheaply for $2 million, go get yourself a new second baseman to replace someone like Rodgers.
Stopgap until, exactly. Yeah. I think that's a possibility. Free agency, I mean, the Rockies are normally very quiet. I mean, even when you go to MLB trade rumors, they always have interesting things to say about in their analysis of the various potential trade activity and all that stuff. And with the Rockies, it's two guys, but it's quite a surprise because the Rockies almost never put anybody up on the trade block. So that in itself is interesting. I think that as far as free agency, a few minor signings are going to definitely happen. And second base could be a place for that. They may very well have to do that if they are able to deal Rodgers, who they have shot before. I think that we're aware that they were close on a deal. I don't know how close on a deal, but for Edward Cabrera of the Marlins, that right-handed, hard-throwing right-hander from Miami, but they didn't pull the trigger on it. That was a couple of years ago.
I'm glad you mentioned that one and not the JT Realmuto one, which probably would have jarred the window open a little bit more. And that's interesting what you say about how, this offseason really could be, a big one that might not move the needle for 2025 to get to the postseason, but you bring in some pieces that really set that table for 2026, depending on the trade activity. And you look the other way and not just selling, but they could even acquire, because it seemed like this time last year, they had a glut of outfield prospects, and another year's gone by. They have a better feel as to, who the guys are going to be, maybe better contributors than others. Then they go out and with the third pick, you get the Golden Spikes Award winner, you get the best college hitter in the game. Now you have even more outfielders. They could get creative and actually add, they did in the Nolan Jones deal, where they took a prospect that they just didn't think he was going to be a fit for them going forward. So maybe one or more of these outfield prospects becomes someone that you use as a trade chip, and you bring in a starting pitcher or anywhere else that you find there to be a need. So you're right. They really could be an interesting offseason for them.
Yeah, I think so. And that's welcome news, right, for Rockies fans. I mean, it's been so much of the same over the past several years that, and I don't blame the Rockies for not being really active on the higher end free agent market in the recent years, because you got to know what you have really with these young players. And you got to kind of start to build an identity, a new identity. They've kind of been in no man's land since the Arenado Story days. And now when they get that identity, it seems like they're starting to build that with guys like Tovar and Doyle, et cetera. It's been kind of a no man's land with regard to what they have been and also what they've tried to do in the offseason. You got to know what you have. So they are a little better positioned now this year than they were at this time last year to know what they need to supplement what they have. As far as pitching, that's always a hard one, because you can't, you aren't able to compete at the high end with pitching, the high end market with pitching, for obvious reasons. Pitchers don't want to come to Coors Field and pitch their home games here. And if you do get them, you're gonna have to overpay them. And then, but Chase Dollander, some of these guys that, Gabriel Hughes, some of these guys that are in the pipeline, you wonder, if you can hit on a couple of those guys, you might have, again, that kind of core couple of guys in your rotation that you can start building on. Now you start looking at that, and if Nolan Jones, bounces back, you're starting to see a more competitive team. I'm not necessarily a playoff team yet, but you're moving in that right direction. So it'll be interesting to see what Bill Schmidt does regarding potential trades we just talked about, and also just how do you there's an art to it, right? Because if you don't really know exactly what your team's identity is yet, and you're trying to form it still, you have to be careful what you do in the off season to not upset the balance that you have kind of moving forward with development. That's why I think that bringing Bud Black back was a good idea. I don't know that you can actually kind of interrupt Bud Black is he's a very good, very well positioned and well suited in terms of his personality and what he does for development. And he's been really that way with these guys, kind of a father figure for these guys. You interrupt that at this point, given where they're at in their development, a new manager is not going to take this team from, 60 and 102 or whatever it was to, 500 in the playoffs. That's not going to happen overnight. So I think that was good to bring Buddy back. And I think he wants to be here when this team starts turning things around, because he has a lot invested in just development now. He knew he had to change things. And things were changing when Arenado and Story left. So he's gone with it. He's been, some people are going to try to blame him for what's all happened, but there's a lot more, above his pay grade that has happened that has resulted in, what's 5 straight losing seasons now.
Yeah, I think it's a reverse of the bamboo theory where things roll downhill.
Yeah, right. The reverse of the bamboo theory, which Bill is very, very fond of. Yeah. Although, you know what, the jury's out on that one. I mean, what if a year from now they are competing in August and September for the postseason, and the bamboo theory starts to pan out, where it's like, and for those who are uninitiated, the bamboo theory is basically that bamboo, it starts very small, but then boom, it shoots. When you least expect it, it just shoots up and becomes really big.
And it grows underground. That's the prospects.
That's exactly. Yeah. Even better. It grows underground. That's very much what I think Bill likens this situation to. We'll just see and now you got to see if it actually pans out.
Yeah. They're really hoping that 2025 is a lot like what 2016 was, taking that big step before the postseason.
That's a good comp, I think. Yeah.
You mentioned Ezekiel Tovar and Brenton Doyle as the emerging players this past year. They are the 2 Colorado Rockies on the All-MLB ballot this year. We will find out who makes the first team and second team All-MLB tonight. Tovar, one of 10 shortstops. Doyle, one of 17 outfielders. And there's going to be 3 starters, the 3 first-team players, and then 3 second-team outfielders. So I think in a way, Doyle might have that better chance at making the second team All-MLB. I know you're somewhat of an old-school guy like myself in a lot of ways when it comes to baseball, but All-MLB, it's been around since 2019. We're in the midst of that award season, and it seems like every year or so, there's more and more awards that are given out. I frankly am, for one, love it. More awards, that's fine. Let's build more history. Let's do more things like that.
It also makes the offseason a little bit more fun, right? When you
I think so too. Yeah. So are you in that same boat, like All-MLB? It's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because one thing that kind of is reminiscent of is just in the name itself. All Pro, All NBA. Like first team, second team. They've been doing that in the NBA for a long, long time. So it's kind of cool. It adds to. And also the cool thing about it too is it combines the leagues. So it's like you're not National League, American League awards, now you're All MLB, which makes a lot more sense in today's game, because really once the DH was made universal, there's really no difference between the leagues anymore. That was really what was keeping the leagues different before, after interleague play, and before interleague play, obviously you only saw the other league in the World Series. But I think it's good. I think it makes for more. Obviously on one end it makes for more content, but on the other end it's great for the audience, because you get to see your favorite players, you get to see guys recognized for their abilities. The other thing too is like some guy, like you mentioned Doyle, like he won a Gold Glove award, but there's I think he's still gonna be, he'd be an underdog or a dark horse pick to get on the second team, but he could. And if he did, again, it gives players more of a chance to get these awards that maybe they wouldn't have gotten elsewhere, All-Star, the various BBWAA awards, because again, all that is really dependent on, on your on the other guys. Guys can have an MVP or Cy Young season, but not win the award. I remember talking to Kyle Freeland about that the year after he was fourth, and basically gave him a list of the guys that he had comparable numbers to over the years that were Cy Young winners, and it was a long list. So it's really context dependent and not necessarily raw number dependent. And so it gives more awards, give more chances to guys who maybe deserve some recognition.
Yeah, with Tovar, I mean, obviously you've got Francisco Lindor, Bobby Witt Jr., Gunnar
That's a
Henderson.
tough one. Yeah.
That's tough. Even Ellie De La Cruz, right? Because it's all rounded. Whereas
Right.
Doyle, you go, maybe. I mean, if Jerks and Profar's out there winning Silver Slugger awards, I think anything is
Yeah.
possible.
Talk about another Rocky who just, non-pitcher edition who just, blew up, had a great season.
No one saw that one coming.
Nobody saw that coming. Not year number 11 or whatever.
Yeah. Every year, the Rockies have had a nominee for the All MLB team. Nolan Jones was their one last year. 2022, Daniel Bard, Brendan Rodgers. 2020 and 2021, Trevor Story. And then 2019, their biggest year yet for the All MLB award. They had 3 nominees: Trevor Story, Nolan Arenado, Charlie Blackmon. But they are one of only 5 teams to not have a first team All MLB. And they're one of only 3 teams to not be on the first or second team. And that might end up being, they might end up being in a group of their own, because the Tigers and Pirates are the only other teams to not have an All MLB player since it started in 2019. Tarek Skubal is going to be on that list, and so is Paul Skeens. So we'll see what ends up happening tonight with that. But yeah, I'm very much in favor of All MLB. I think it's definitely a fun thing in general. I do want to pick your brain on Juan Soto. Do you have any thoughts as to where he might end up? Because he is the first and biggest domino that once he goes, talking yesterday with Jesse Friedman from PHNX Diamondbacks, Juan Soto, I feel like once he settles somewhere, that has a trickle down effect to someone like a Christian Walker. Because if the Mets don't get Juan Soto, okay, now they got to bring back Pete Alonso. And if you wanted to get Pete Alonso, if you're someone like the Mariners, let's say, and you want to bring in a Pete Alonso and then he goes back to the Mets, well, who's next up on the docket? Christian Walker. So it's a huge domino for sure. What are your takes on the childish Bambino?
Well, I think that it's really New York in the field. So I think that it's either Yankees or Mets. Yankees because he had, he's just perfect fit there. He had such a great season. He's in he's in the limelight. He's in a place where the fans already adore him and they think he's awesome. He had a great season, career high in home runs. Really, if not for Judge, probably is an MVP front runner right now. And then the Mets, they have Steve Cohen in his pocketbook. So, you can never count the Mets out. If Steve Cohen wanted to just break the bank for Soto, that would be hard for the Yankees, I think, to match. Just depends on how far the Mets are willing to go. There might be a limit. There might be a line. It's kind of like Yoshinobu Yamamoto last year. The Yankees, I think, offered $300 million. And they were outdone by the Dodgers, who offered $325, and he went with the Dodgers. Obviously, Ohtani's there, and there are some other, there might be other incentives for him to go to LA, but there was a line that the Yankees drew, and the question is, where's that line for Soto? Is it 650? Is it 675? Is it 700? And because that's the hard part with the Mets, is if you're another team, is that they could bid higher. They could just bid up and bid higher. So I think it's either New York team. He likes being out there on the East Coast. I think he probably prefers East Coast. So Dodgers, are always one that you can't count out, but I think it's Yankees or Mets right now.
I think I know where that line is. It's a blank line on a check that's going to be handed across the table.
Yeah, that's what's going to be interesting, because if that's how it goes and they bid him up to like Shohei territory, because coming into the season, I think we thought 500, maybe 550. Yeah. And but what he did last year, and the Yankees got to the World Series, there's going to be some pretty upset Yankee fans. Let's just put it that way. If he's not in pinstripes next year.
You had an article that just came out about a new series for MLB called Hidden Classic.
Yeah, it's fun.
And the first one is the final game at the Kingdome in Seattle, June 27th, 1999. And I don't know if you want to spill the beans yet on some of the other Hidden Classic, but I think this is a great concept. This was one where in watching it, I was like, wow, that really is a Hidden Classic. And it got my wheels turning on so many other things that we can talk about here in a second. But this is a great series. I'm excited that MLB.com is putting that out.
Oh, it's great. I mean, when they asked me to write the kind of teaser for the first one, I was excited because it was like, it's right up I know it's right up your alley. But there are games that, everybody remembers. Every baseball fan either remembers or is very well aware of. The Kirk Gibson walk-off home run, Buckner in '86, Carlton Fisk off the foul pole in '75, Luis Gonzalez broken bat single. You could just go all the way back, even beyond that, into history. But there are also games that should be recognized as classics that maybe don't reach that echelon or that level, but they were fun and they were classics, and they really gave us some enjoyable moments as baseball fans. And there's one of them. I mean, Ken Griffey Jr. was, again, just as you'd expect, the star in the final game at the Kingdome, because unlike many other situations, the Kingdome closed in the middle of a season, and then the I actually was there at Safeco for one of the first games there. I think it was probably in July, sometime in July of that year. And I think I saw the Red Sox and Mariners, but Griffey, it was amazing. He homered in that last game at the Kingdome. He robbed Juan Gonzalez of a home run. Just one of those where it's like Jay Buhner likes to say, like, what else? Like, what else do you expect? Like, this guy's not even, it's like he's not real. Like, he does just superhuman things when the moment is the biggest or when the lights are brightest. And one of those was the last game at the Kingdome where the Mariners spent 22 years. And there's some really interesting, you got to check that out. I'm not going to give away the factoids because they have little factoids that show up there at the bottom right of the screen when relevant. And there's some really interesting ones from that game that even I didn't realize until I watched it this last time and started looking for stuff. So it's cool.
Yeah, that was fun to watch. Brian Hunter made a sliding catch on the AstroTurf, and you just saw his knee just explode his pants.
Pants were ripped open,
which is basically concrete with a rug on top of it. It again, so many different things. It made me start thinking like, wow, the Kingdome only around for 22 years.
Yeah, that was a little bit surprising where it's like, I mean, you think more, right? But yeah, it was 77 to 99. I'll tell you something about the turf. In talking to, I did a story about 3 years ago on Ken Griffey Jr.'s trade to Cincinnati, and just kind of how that all went down. And I talked to his agent, and he said that he was doing like a Pepsi commercial or something with Griffey, on the field. So he's out there, and I guess it was off season or whatever. No, it wasn't off season. It was probably during the season. Griffey comes out, and after the commercial shoot, he's like, "Man, when are they going to roll out the turf, man? This is ridiculous." Because it was like Costco floor, hard. And he's like, "What are you talking about? This is a turf." Because he thought they like rolled over the actual green that you see. He thought they actually rolled another layer over that because to make it a little bit easier for the guys. So you wonder why Ken Griffey Jr. had all those injuries in Cincinnati. I mean, running around doing what he did out there for 10 years. That's a lot of mileage, no matter who you are. But if you're a center fielder like Griffey, who's basically a gazelle out there, going after everything remotely close to him, to the point where you just expect him to catch anything that's, plausible, and even maybe something that's not plausible. That's a lot of mileage. He had a lot of knee problems in Cincinnati, so things didn't go well from there. But that's probably why. Yeah,
AstroTurf also, when he got to Cincinnati, he got a little bit of
exactly. Yeah, he got there right before they went and moved to Great American. Yeah,
I had almost a Mandela effect of something where I wanted to tell you about it, and then I looked it up and found out I was wrong. It's like, oh,
what was it?
This video about the Kingdome, and it wasn't the Kingdome. So what I had in my head, my memory was someone set up a camera across, like on a bridge, looking out at the Kingdome when it was going to get imploded.
Oh yeah.
And right as it happened, a bus pulled up and blocked it. And you could hear the guy under his breath like, "No, what are you doing? No." But it actually was the Georgia Dome in 2017
okay.
when they.
Gotcha.
So I felt a little bit better for that
I mean,
guy.
I remember some pretty clear video of the implosion of.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of.
My biggest Mandela effect thing is the Bernstein Bears. The cartoon. I thought it was always spelled one way, but it's actually spelled another way. Like it's actually spelled with an A, Bernstein Bears. Yeah. And I always thought it was with an E. And so yeah, it's a real thing for sure.
My submission for a hidden classic, because again, if you're a Mariners fan, you probably do think about the Kingdome, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like, hey, each fan base take a game. My submission for the Rockies would be Jason Jennings' debut, August 23rd, 2001, shutout, hits a home run at Shea Stadium, less than a month before 9/11 on top of that too.
Yeah.
Just before his Rookie of the Year award, right? And he wins as a pitcher. You never would have guessed a pitcher would win the Rookie of the Year award for the Rockies, right?
That's amazing, right? And so there's a lot of elements there that make it a classic. And so I think that's a great idea. I think the Rockies probably have a lot of those, just given the altitude at which they play. Coors, get one of those ugly classics where it's like 15 to 14 and 13 innings or whatever. But yeah, like just the seesaw games. I'm sure there are a few of those there too. But that's a good one.
I know you're contracted to MLB.com, but you know what? If you ever want to do something on the side called Ugly Classics, we'll collaborate. I love that name.
You know what? We're in the right market. We could find plenty of them here. Going back through the books.
As you said, it got me thinking like, oh man, that's interesting that the Kingdome, or rather Safeco Field, wasn't ready in time. Mm-hmm. Had to look it up. Rogers Center is the only other ballpark that didn't open on opening day, June 5th, 1989. Should be noted, we'll throw a little asterisk around Coors Field. Wasn't until April 26th. Of course, that was because of a work stoppage.
Yeah.
And then the only other one, the latest start in a year, even later than Safeco Field,
really,
July 24th, 2020, Globe Life Field, because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and that the pandemic and everything, it just gets kind of lost.
It does.
That was in the middle of the year. Yeah. That's one thing about Globe Life, though. Like I was at the All-Star game this year. I don't know, and I was there, I think, for a series, the Dodgers series. I was covering the Dodgers there last year for a series. I don't know how they attracted free agents before they had a roof. I mean, I don't know. Just being out there in the middle of July in Arlington with the humidity, you're drinking the air and it's so hot, and especially when the sun's beating down on you. I don't know how players did it, let alone the fans, but they were in outdoor stadiums for 50 years?
And it just that ballpark in particular is surrounded by concrete. Like you can't even walk around. Like with Coors Field, even if it is a super hot day, like you can go and do things.
No, you can find a place just away from the heat. Yeah, nowhere to hide it at the ballpark at Arlington.
No, you couldn't have paid me to cover that field. No doubt about it. Rockies Insider with Patrick Lyons. We got Manny Randhawa here of MLB.com. We did get news on Thursday, opening day 2025. We actually know where the Rockies are going to play, more specifically than just the Tampa area.
Right.
Tampa Bay Rays announced that the entire 2025 regular season will be played at George M. Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, the spring training home of the New York Yankees and the low A home of the Florida League's Tampa Tarpons. So the Tarpons will play on a backfield whenever the Rays are home. So now we do know you don't have to change your flights. You can still go to Tampa, but now tickets are going to be a little bit more harder to come by with capacity at only about 11,000. Yeah,
it's interesting, right? Because now we got the A's going to Sacramento, and then we got the Rays that they're playing in a spring training facility. So it's challenging, right? It's going to be challenging for both clubs, just given what happened. Obviously, people saw what happened with the hurricane that destroyed at least the roof. I'm not sure how much inside was damaged, but the roof of Tropicana Field is just ripped off, basically. And so now the Rays are forced to play elsewhere. So yeah, like you said, it's going to be a lot. The capacity is going to be 3 or 4 times smaller. So it's going to definitely be harder to get tickets. So if anybody wants to get tickets to see the Rockies on opening day, they probably should jump on that pretty soon, because they just announced it officially this morning. But I'm not sure the logistics of that in terms of tickets right now, but if you want to go, you probably should jump on it early.
One of the issues I think they were having is just in general, the concept that, look, it rains in Tampa, so you need a dome. So they're not going to have one now.
Yeah.
They still need a place to play in 2026 and 2027 before the new field gets built, assuming that it is on time and we don't add another new stadium to a Safeco and whatnot, Rogers Center. So maybe they do leave the roof off of Tropicana Field for those 2 years, and then they
I guess it depends on how. Yeah, I guess it depends on how, like, just the mechanics of how you're going to fix the place. I don't know. It's pretty old. I don't know how challenging it's going to be to fix it. So are you going to just play? You'd think maybe they will just play without a roof, for a while, because putting a roof, capping that thing again, I don't know how easy that can be given the way it's structured and how old it is.
As you mentioned, Tropicana Field being old, 1990 was when it built, so actually older than Coors Field. And because both Oakland Coliseum, 1966, and Tropicana Field, 1990, are now off the mat, that does mean Coors Field will be the 10th oldest ballpark for the 2025 season.
Amazing, right? And it looks brand new.
Oh, it's so
amazing.
Nice.
It looks great. It looks better than it. I think it looks better than it did even when it opened. It's pretty amazing.
Well, especially when you see some of those old videos of like Larry Walker in the mid to late 90s and center field, the batter's eye, the trees, either there's nothing there or you got these little tiny saplings. Now it's not overgrown.
It's a forest.
Not in a bad way. It's a forest. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we had the incident that we have every single year where someone from the visiting bullpen I don't think that happened this year. This is like the first time.
I don't think so either. Like somebody's always, sitting there in the forest watching the game from one of the relievers always goes out there, right?
Always.
So I'm trying to think who.
I don't think
I'm trying to think if anybody did that last year, but I can't think of one. So maybe it didn't happen. Maybe the Rockies should. When's the last time the Rockies did it? The Rockies should just.
They know better. They know better. Well, they could have gotten away with it, obviously, with the Green City Connects if they wanted to.
That's true. It's camouflage.
Good buddy Justin Wick, now working for the Sacramento River Cats, pointing out. Also, hadn't thought of this. Oakland Coliseum, Tropicana Field off the map, which means 2025 will, I guess, be the first time ever we won't have bullpens on the playing field.
Oh,
those are the last two.
That's a great call.
Justin Wick, of course, he pays attention.
Yeah, I mean that's a good call. That's true and great. That's great. I mean, it creates more safety for the players. It's obviously better to have the bullpens out of play. I mean, it just doesn't make sense in this day and age to have those kinds of obstacles. I mean, like Tal's Hill, it's like what was the point of that? Like, I still don't know why whose idea that was and why. Because
it was Tal's idea.
It was Tal's idea. So I mean, if you're gonna get named after you might as well. But like it just creates a hazard. Why would we want to go back to the 1950s with like the monuments and play at Yankee Stadium and stuff like that? It just doesn't seem to make sense, especially given how much is invested in these guys now.
It's probably no surprise that our good buddy Thomas Harding, I think, wishes the monuments were still in play. I kind of remember him mentioning that this last, as he does, as we all do, kind of repeat ourselves over and over again. I feel like he likes that.
Well, I remember talking to for the Lake Street Bombers book. I remember talking to John Miller because he was the play-by-play guy for the first game at Coors Field, and he said I just was seriously just suggesting that they just create a polo ground situation at Denver at Coors. I think only John Miller would think of something like that. Like that's because like, just, lean into it. If it's going to be hard to hit, if it's going to be easy to hit it out here, just make it impossible to hit it out here,
and leave the trees out and leave the water fixture,
leave everything in the way.
Soggy baseball into second base. Why not?
A lot of inside the Parkers. Yeah.
That's a whole other concept of like, all right, what if new rule in the MLB, just take the fences down and maybe create some kind of steps if you had to play out every single baseball. I mean, if it goes in the stands, it's the stands. It's in there. But if you could possibly keep a guy to a triple for a ball that goes into the trees in center field, I mean, Brenton Doyle could track that ball down. Think of the plays Doyle could make in center field if there was no wall there. Climbing up a tree.
What if he climbed up the tree? Yeah. What if he climbed up the tree?
Oh, my God.
That would be incredible, right?
Yeah, he'd have like 35 outs above average in the month of April with some of those plays.
He's not afraid to go get it, man. We've seen it. I
Oh,
still think they should have put a chalk outline on the wall with his pose when he caught that ball, when he knocked a dent into the fence in center field.
they still didn't fix that.
Yeah.
That was not fixed.
Yeah.
Also, I want to mention this because, again, there's always new listeners every day, and sometimes it takes people 2 or 3 times to hear it. But I feel like I mention it every few months. In center field, so you mentioned Tal's Hill at Minute Maid Park. In Albuquerque, they had Taupe slope, they called it, right? And they had that curved slope.
Yep.
It also had one other nickname. I don't know if you know, but it was taken from the manager of the Isotopes for a while in AAA. For he was on the Rockies coaching staff for a while. But one of the secret nicknames of Taupe Slope was also Glen Allen Hill, which I think is a great name. Come on,
you know what? That should be the official name. Like, they should just make that the official name. Glen Allen Hill. That's awesome.
Let's retroactively do that. Yes.
That is awesome. They should also didn't Glen Allen Hill hit the roof across from Wrigley Field out in left field one time?
Yeah. And
I think he did, right? They should put something up there, like a little sign, Glen Allen Hill or something.
I think he also fell out of bed because he was having a dream about spiders, but that's
cut himself up. Yeah.
Neither here nor there. All right, let's talk about
a man that large and intimidating, and with that kind of presence, to be scared of anything is remarkable.
The itsy bitsy spider came down the water spout, and Glen Allen Hill went on the 15-day IL. All right, let's talk about the Hall of Fame.
It was DL back then, but yeah, IL.
That's true. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame. We'll try to keep this conversation down to about 3 hours. Okay. You and I.
That's good. I was wondering if we were going to cap it at something.
We were, the 3 hour mark is what we'll do. But from this point, so it'll be a 3.5 hour pod. Veterans Committee is going to meet down in Dallas Sunday, December 8th is when the announcement gets made by MLB Network. We've got 8 names from this classic baseball era committee. So it's candidates whose most significant career impact was realized prior to 1980. You still need to get 75% of the ballots cast for you. So 12 of the 16, if you get in, you get that 75%, you get inducted next summer, July 27th, 2025, along with any electees that emerge from the 2025 BBWAA election. We've got Dick Allen, Ken Boyer, John Donaldson, Steve Garvey, Vic Harris, Tommy John, Dave Parker, Louis Tiant. Any of those just right off the bat to you jump out as a Hall of Famer?
Dick Allen should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. I mean, this guy, I had a note here. There are 5 guys in MLB history who had a career Baseball Reference WAR over 58 and a career OPS plus over 156. Who are not in the Hall of Fame. Their names are Barry Bonds, Mike Trout, Shoeless Joe Jackson, and Mark McGwire and Dick Allen. That's it.
Wow.
So the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame it's egregious, really. The dude, I mean, and the fact that he only got like 20. He got 18%, 18.9% of the vote was the high that his high watermark for BBWAA. He has been on the Veterans Committee before. He just, he got 68.8% both times, 2015 and 2022. But it's long overdue. That guy is a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's got, I think one of the things that, there are 2 things I think that have kept him out, and they're both unfair. One is, I think like some writers just didn't like him, which is like, I don't care. I don't know anything about Dick Allen outside of, some highlights in the numbers, but no matter who it is, your job is to put in the guy if he belongs in the Hall of Fame. And this guy absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame. And secondly, his career was relatively short. I think he only played for like 11 seasons or something like that. But he was the 1964 NL Rookie of the Year with the Phillies, 1972 AL MVP with the White Sox. He was one of the great hitters of that generation. And so he absolutely belongs in there. I think that's the one that jumps out at me the most. There are some guys that I think are borderline and, could be Hall of Famers. Ken Boyer, 5 Gold Gloves at third base, 11-time All-Star, 1964 NL MVP, about 63 BWAR. His high was 25.5% by BBWA. I think he deserves real hard look.
To your
Steve
point,
Garvey.
and to your
What's that?
point, to go back to that, so
Yeah.
5 Gold Glove awards at third base. Jose Ramirez just won his 5th, and we all
Mhm.
know how
Yeah.
revered he is. 11
Yeah.
All-Star game selections. Right
Yeah.
now, there's only one active player in baseball that has been selected to the All-Star game
Yeah.
11 times, Mike Trout.
There you
Right
go.
after that, you got Clayton
So
Kershaw
actually,
10.
he's
That
he's
gives you
got a
that
lot of
perspective,
the
right?
yeah, he's got a lot of the old school accolades down. I think that he's definitely one guy that deserves a real hard look. Steve Garvey, who just lost an election, like was he running for Senate or something?
That's right, yeah.
He's got a lot of the old school accolades too. 1974 NL MVP, 10-time All-Star, 2-time All-Star Game MVP, 4-time Gold Glove, 2-time NLCS MVP, 1981 World Series champ. But the sabermetrics are not on his side at all, really. He 117 OPS plus over 19 seasons, 272 home runs. So a lot of the kind of the milestone numbers that some people look for aren't there. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. He's got a lot of those kind of accolades that suggest that he is. There are a couple of Negro League stars that I think are
Yes.
Hall of Famers, and there's Vic Harris and there's John Donaldson. John Donaldson, like I said, Dick Allen was the only one. Actually, John Donaldson, who was called quote unquote famous Donaldson, that was his nickname, famous, because he was like Satchel Paige before Satchel Paige, and by some estimates, I know people like wins. I'm not one of them, but by some estimates, he won 413 games at a pro level, 5,091 strikeouts, pitched in parts of some, I don't know if this is apocryphal or if this is really true, 42 seasons. Even he was pitching at the age of 58. John Donaldson, I think, is absolutely a Hall of Famer. Vic Harris, not as a slam dunk of a case, but he was a really great Negro Leagues player as well. Career 814 OPS, 25 seasons as a player. Was a great manager too. So that's what might really push him in, is that he won 6 Negro National League pennants, and the last Negro Leagues World Series was 1948, and his team, the Homestead Grays, with one Willie Mays in center field, won that. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's funny. So yeah, the Negro League players are such a unique case, and I think John Donaldson definitely, I think, is a no doubter. He was a player that I can remember 10, 15 years ago. So a lot of research being done on his behalf, and uncovered all of these interesting statistics, and there were very few detractors, but they made a great case when the Negro Leagues were considered a part of the majors, right? And you go, well, why would that be a bad thing? Like, people should learn more about these players on Baseball Reference. And I think it is definitely way more positive than it is negative. But as you just said, running through some of those numbers, especially when it comes to someone like a John Donaldson, who played for, close to 40 years, whatever it was, and, had, depending on which website you might use, reportedly 420 wins, over 5,000 strikeouts. But if you go on Baseball Reference, it shows him as having 69 career strikeouts and winning only 6 games.
That's the hard part.
But the reason is because those are the only official Negro League games in which there were box scores. So there's some box scores that are missing, and a lot of what the games that he played, which were the only ones that were available to him at that time. Keep in mind, it wasn't as if he was just, hey, I want to go barnstorming and I want to make a couple bucks over here, some of there in these exhibitions, and maybe play against Townsville.
I mean, this guy was born in 18. I think this guy was born in like 1890. Or 1881. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Fences with Denzel Washington. It's really good. It's about it's not based on a true story, but it's based on a play, I think. And Denzel plays a former Negro Leagues pitcher. Actually, no, he was a former Negro Leagues slugger who was like Josh Gibson good. And but it was all before before the major leagues integrated, and so he never really got his chance to show it. There are a lot of players who never even got their chance to show it in a lot of the Negro League games. You know what I mean? Like before the Negro National Leagues began, this guy was already doing his thing, and so I think he even may have been some kind of a mentor to Satchel Paige. But this is a guy that I think absolutely deserves to be in. It's really unfortunate that records. With records being so difficult to come by with the Negro Leagues, that it's just like you said, there's such a disparity between what we know but don't know, and what's in the records, and that's too
Yeah.
bad. But shouldn't stop. I don't think. With Kendrick, Mr. Kendrick in Kansas City, right? The Negro Leagues Museum.
Bob Kendrick. Yeah.
Bob Kendrick. He's doing a great job of he has done a great job over many years of kind of bringing to the baseball world's attention how good a lot of these guys were. And that's a hard thing to do when you don't have all the box scores, right? It's just, you're kind of piecing things together. For you to be able to piece things together to the point where it's legit and you can say, yes, this guy, we have eyewitnesses, we have our eyewitness accounts, and we have all this other stuff, then yeah, I think that should be absolutely considered for this stuff. So I think John Donaldson and Dick Allen are the two kind of no doubters. The other guys, there's some interesting names on there, but I think Tommy John's more known for an operation that bears his name than
Sure
his career, which is sad because he was good. He had a career 3.3 ERA, 25 seasons. He pitched until he was 46, and
26 seasons.
So obviously, yeah, he pitched until like 1989, and he was, obviously the career was prolonged by that surgery, and we know now why that is, and it's only gotten more popular as things have kind of changed in the game and how hard guys throw and how early they're throwing more pitches and harder each time. So I think, I think that he has a career that is overshadowed by the surgery, but that was really good. I don't know if it was Hall of Fame good, but it was really good. I think he, 3.34 ERA, 2.65 in 88 innings in the postseason.
288 wins. I mean, he's right there.
Yeah, with the wins, he was right there. He's 12 wins short, and he was runner-up for the Cy Young twice. So good career, really good career. And whether or not it's Hall of Fame worthy, he deserves more recognition than just being known for the guy who was the first guy to have his surgery. So.
Which it's always so funny. I can't say I totally make a habit of talking about baseball history with a lot of Rockies and players, but they don't know their history that well. It would be curious if you took a survey of baseball players, particularly the young ones, if they knew Tommy John was actually a real surgery.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is it called that? Why is it called that? I don't know.
No, probably not, because it happened 50 years ago.
So
I think 51 now.
Get this. Tommy John surgery right now takes between 60 and 90 minutes, right?
Incredible.
Now, when Dr. Frank Jobe performed it on Tommy John, it took 4 hours.
Yep.
So think about that. It prolonged his 12-year career into another 14 years. So after Tommy John surgery,
Amazing.
after getting a him surgery, 14 more seasons, 164 more wins, and 2,500 plus innings. And Tommy John did once say, I guess probably trying to boost his cause, that those 164 wins that he accumulated after Tommy John surgery was only one less than Sandy Koufax had in his entire career. So to put that in context a little bit.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. I mean, Sandy Koufax is the ultimate peak war guy. So
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this about John Donaldson. So one of those figures, and to go back to that part of the conversation, while we might not have the box scores, we do know that there are tens, if not hundreds, of articles written by noted journalists that weren't bloggers. Blogs didn't exist, that would say, hey, this is one of the greatest pitchers in the game right now.
You got to go. Baseball is such a numbers-based game, statistical game, but you got to go with what you got, and you got to go with legitimate and reliable sources, right? So if you have those, like you mentioned, legit journalists documenting what he did, that's good enough. That's good enough for me.
So he's credited with 14 no-hitters.
Yeah.
Two perfect games, dozens of one-hitters. He also had 2 30 strikeout games.
Incredible.
Extras, man. Or either that or his catcher just passed balls everywhere. 11 games with 25 strikeouts, including 2 back-to-back 25 strikeouts games. He was credited apparently with coming up with the nickname Monarchs for the Kansas Monarchs. And for the Colorado folks out there, one of those no-hitters did come in Julesburg, Colorado on July 16th, 1917.
That's
and
a great
I did find the image from the Denver Post that he did throw that. So that might be something for our Rocky Mountain Sabre chapter to go.
That's a great
plaque
idea
up somewhere.
Especially if they vote him in, right? So that's great.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good one. Yeah, Garvey, as you said, the numbers might not be there. He's almost maybe a modern Gil Hodges, where
Yeah, I would
integral
say.
in a lot of championship teams, especially that '84 Padres club. And I found it interesting that Garvey actually serves as a member on a board of the Baseball Assistance Team, a nonprofit organization
Hmm.
dedicated to
Right.
helping former Major League, minor league, and Negro League players through financial and medical hardship. So
Hmm.
I think that's pretty neat. And yeah, Dave Parker, he won the very first home run derby.
Yeah.
Was the NL MVP in 1978, 7 All-Star game appearances, won 3 Gold Gloves in right field. He was mired in that 1980s cocaine drug scandal, was once traded for a guy you wrote a book about,
Yeah.
Dante Bichette.
Right.
Blake
Yep.
Street Bombers, by the way, if anyone doesn't know, go out and get a copy, especially for the holiday of Blake Street Bombers. Is there anywhere, I still have a couple more things to talk with you about, but
Yeah.
is there a website or anywhere that people can go and get your book? Not just get the book, but get it and get you to sign it too.
No, just Amazon. If you want me to sign it, I'd be happy to. We can figure out a way to make that happen. Just DM me, and my DMs are open on Twitter at Manny on MLB. It's up here somewhere. Yeah.
And if you're shy and you don't want to do that, you can reach out to me. If you know me,
Mhm.
we'll help navigate that. And
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And yeah, it's this next year will be the 30th year of the Bombers. 30 years since Coors Field, 30 years since the Bombers were put together. So definitely some more nostalgia probably upcoming for Rockies fans.
I highly recommend
For this
people check
season.
it out. There's so many things you don't know, including the nickname that they were going to pick before it was the Bombers. Don't give it away. That's why you got
Oh,
to buy
right.
the book.
Yeah.
That's why you got to
Yeah.
buy the book. Louis Tiant, also like Dick Allen, recently passed away.
Yep.
He did last 15 years on the Hall of Fame ballot, believe it or not, from 88 to 2002, 3 All-Star games selection. So yeah, there's definitely some qualified guys on that list. Now, we've still got about 2 months until we know who's a part of the class of 2025 on the BBWA ballot. That hasn't been released. But 4 former Rockies could be on the ballot. 2 for sure.
Yeah.
2 maybe. Mark Reynolds is a maybe. Ian Desmond, and definitely got to think Carlos Gonzalez and Troy
Cargo
Tulowitzki.
and Troy Tulowitzki are definitely going to be on there. Yeah.
Yeah, will any of them get the 5% needed to stay on the ballot? That's really
That's tough. I mean,
that feels like the benchmark right now, right, man? Like if you get 5% your
just
first
survive
year,
and advance.
survive, and now people start to talk more and go,
Right.
shoot, you know what? I maybe need to do my research a little bit more on Troy Tulowitzki. Obviously didn't have the long career, but he had a peak. Again, I don't think he'll get the 5, but if you can get 5, you have a 90% better shot than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough. I think for all of those guys, it's going to be tough to survive in advance. Obviously, Tulo and Cargo have the best shot to advance. I think a lot of it depends on the returning names on the list and how clogged the ballot is. We're looking at Billy Wagner, who is so close, and I think he'll get in this time. He finished at 70, just under 74%. You need 75% to be elected. Andrew Jones is, this is going to be his 8th year, but I think he's going to trend toward election. People will be voting for him. A-Rod, I don't know. Carlos Beltran, I think, will eventually get in late in his eligibility. Manny Ramirez is almost done off the list. So yeah, I mean, they might, just looking at the names on here, they might be able to survive just because of the fact that guys will have room on their ballots to vote for more guys than maybe they really think are going to make it to the Hall of Fame. I think this year we know that Ichiro has got a great chance to be a first ballot guy, and CC Sabathia I think has a chance to be first ballot. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he's got a chance to be first ballot. It would be a little surprising.
That's
but
interesting. Yeah. I do want to talk with you a lot more, maybe in a month from now, having a much more deeper conversation. Dustin Pedroia, Ian Kinsler, a couple of names that were
names for sure.
Pedroia, definitely not a first ballot, but he's one of those guys. And that's the thing right now too with the Hall of Fame. And this is kind of be the last thing that we end on is the Hall of Fame. And really, we're talking about BBWA voters, which you and I are both members of the Baseball Writers Association of America. Neither of us have a vote yet. You're past the halfway mark already. You only got
I think
4 or so left until you get your first Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think I'm in year 6 or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, I was counting. I'm amped for you. But so it's really the voters. almost have to change the parameters of what we consider to be a Hall of Famer, because we were
Mhm.
at a period of time in which, sure, you get 300 wins, you're guaranteed in, and then we knew what an exception looked like. Now,
Right.
if you get 200 wins, I mean, maybe you got to consider a guy for just getting to 200. We went from a time in which 500 home runs or 3,000 hits was unique, and now
Yeah.
400 homers and at least 2,000 hits are unique. And
Right.
it's really hard to really pin down, because guys are having shorter careers, retiring early. Buster Posey is a guy where, does he care about the Hall of Fame that much? And I don't mean that in a bad way. Dude retired. He's like, I'm good. I've made enough money. I want to give back to the game. Now the president of baseball operations for the Giants. So, going to be, continue to be a baseball lifer, but a long Hall of Fame baseball career looks so much different right now.
Yeah.
Guys in the last 20 plus years than it did, I think, ever in the history of baseball.
Yeah. So it's a combination of things, right? There's part of it is you have shorter career. It's just the game has changed, and so have careers. So you got to take that into account. Also, I think, look, the Hall of Fame was just too stingy for the longest time. I mean, there are a lot of guys who have real cases. We just talked about, Dick Allen, for example. A lot of guys had real cases. Walker was that guy too, a few years ago, that they absolutely, now Helton, they absolutely could be considered Hall of Famers, but never had a chance because they didn't reach certain round numbers. It just became too much of a, I mean, if 1% of the game's history makes it to the Hall of Fame, that's really, really stingy. So I'm not a big Hall guy, but I'm a bigger Hall guy.
Same.
And so I think there are a lot of guys who missed out that should be recognized in the Hall of Fame, should have a plaque there. And that is, with this newer generation of voters, as the cycle continues, I think that cohort has made it clear that they are bigger Hall people, and they think that there should be more players represented in the Hall of Fame. Now, sometimes, look, there's the Harold Baines thing where, like, Harold Baines is a great player. I really feel bad that he's going to be that guy, but he's not, in my book, a Hall of Famer, but he's in the Hall of Fame. So sometimes, because of the way the way the system is set up with veterans committees and BBWAA and everything else, and how they're voted upon, sometimes guys get in that shouldn't be in there. And then the problem is then they're saying that the bar is lowered. And that argument about the bar being lowered gets confounded with the idea that we're putting guys in the Hall of Fame that belong in there, but can be lumped in with Harold Baines because some people think they don't belong in there. So that's tough. It's still a situation. It's better than it's been, man. I mean, you remember, 5 years ago or whatever, when the Walker push was going on, and it was like there was a stubborn determination to keep the Hall tiny, and
right.
So now it's much more open because of things that have happened, like with Tim Raines and Walker and Helton
And
a lot of
public
guys.
ballots. Public ballots is also,
And making ballots public. Yeah, absolutely. I think that definitely had an impact.
where now you're
too.
held
So
accountable, not in any real strong negative way, but just, okay, you can't just say, no, I don't want to vote for anybody because I didn't like these guys, or I didn't watch them, or I'm not really a baseball writer anymore, because there are some people out there that still have a BBWA card that, from different cities that maybe are more radio guys and never even show up at the ballpark. And, I hadn't thought of this until you just mentioned now, like this younger generation of voters, which, and by younger, we're talking about people that are about 40 years old, but still a younger generation of voters. They saw.
Thank you for calling me young.
At 40, yeah.
I'm 41.
But that generation of newer voters, they saw their entire generation of stars wiped off the map and not be considered. That's one of the biggest tragedies that I feel. That, when I talk about the great players that I enjoyed watching, now all of a sudden, when you want to talk about a Frank Thomas or a McGuire or a Sosa and compare it with a Jimmy Fox or a Mickey Mantle, you go, some old timers might go, yeah, but Mickey Mantle didn't use performance enhancing drugs, and that's the end of the conversation. And that's not fair. You just wiped away all of my childhood in many ways. And no one wants that to happen. So we want to be able to recognize guys. More is way better than less.
I really think that's an awesome point. I never thought about it that way, but it's absolutely true. There is a lived experience from the newer voters, right? That they saw that happen and they don't want it to happen anymore. And that's why they are more willing to really dig into the numbers and see if a guy really has a case. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing. Even after this, I mean, assuming Dick Allen makes it, I really hope he does. There's still a lot of guys that there's Cooperstown injustice, right? That hasn't been wrongs that haven't been righted. I mean, Kenny Lofton is near the top of that list. That just comes to mind, but there are a lot of other guys too that it's like, okay, we really need. I come across them all the time. Like sometimes I'll be researching something for a story or something, and I'll come across a guy. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, like
Carlos Delgado, one ballot. You're like, really?
Yeah, this guy had a, legitimate. Should have gotten a better look. So hopefully they continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Jay Jaffe is the one that has like Cooperstown casebook. I think they're probably.
He's done a lot for this, by the way. He's done so much for this whole push to make the hall, a little bit more equitable.
I think the companion book that maybe I need to write, Cooperstown Crimes. Guy. Think about it. I think Joe DiMaggio got in on his 4th ballot. You go, no, that's insane, right? It's Joe DiMaggio.
But that goes to the whole stubborn kind of stingy attitude of
Knights of the Keyboard
back then.
Knights of the Keyboard, as Ted Williams would call us, I guess.
The what?
The Knights of the Keyboard.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
what
do you have to do? What do you have to do to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? Do you have to be better than Joe DiMaggio? 3 ballots better? I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about that, but it's true.
Yeah, it's wild. Manny, dude, this was a lot of fun.
Always, man. Always happy to be on.
Kept into 3 hours. I don't know how we did it. Maybe we left a lot of meat on the bone. We'll have to talk again.
Oh, we'll do it again for
next month. Go ahead and plug away. Let folks know where to get your book and anything else you might be working on.
Sure, Amazon.com. Just type in Blake Street Bombers. The first thing you'll see is the book. And at Manny on MLB for Twitter. That's where my stories are. MLB.com. This off season, you should be able to just go there and see a few things. But yeah, it's just kind of transitioning to off-season mode now and see, once I think, like you said earlier, once Soto signs, I think the dominoes will start to fall a lot quicker.
And get ready for some more hidden classics. That's going to be
more hidden classics, man. I don't even know what they are, so I'm looking forward to it just as much as you to see what they are.
They're double hidden then. If you don't even know what they are, that's. Yeah. Double hidden must be really good classics and maybe ugly classics too. We'll see if
any Rockies games get on there, you can bet that they're going to be ugly. So
I love it. At Patrick D Lyons, MLB, and at Rockies_insider. Appreciate you, Manny. Appreciate everyone in the chat jumping in and giving me that momentum. But as I like to say, similar to starting pitchers are concerned, my momentum, it's only as good as my next show. So I'll talk to you then.